Good to go.
Wonderful. Hello and welcome to episode 6 in Reach the World's professional development series. This is not actually a teacher feature, but a special feature where we'll be having a chance to speak with former Reach the World traveler, Deepa Rajan. She will introduce herself in a minute, but first a reminder. Number one, this is for all of you who are watching this live, as well as those who will be watching it on demand in the future. You are leaders in the world of virtual learning. And we at Reach the World are here for you and will continue to support you however we can. And to better support you in that, please visit athome.reachtheworld.org. That's athome.reachtheworld.org for the most up-to-date information. Now, we have a really fun and exciting session for you all today, where we will be speaking with Deepa and some of the work that she has been doing as an M.D Ph.D. student at the University of California in San Francisco, and more specifically, the initiative that she is leading called COVID-19 Classes for Kids. And she will go into some logistics, some of the content that she and her team have been putting together, as well as some resources. So to introduce the host from the Reach the World side of things, I am Christopher Ahern. I am Director of Partnerships for Reach the World. And joining me today is also Tim Jacob, who is the Director of our Traveler Program and will be moderating the chat going on both YouTube as well as on our website. And if you have any questions, comments, or anything, please use our live chat as well as the YouTube chat to share any questions or other information that would be relevant to today's conversation. But without further ado, I would like to introduce to everyone, former Reach the World traveler, current M.D. Ph.D. candidate at the University of California, San Francisco, as well as one of the leaders of the COVID-19 Classes for Kids initiative, Deepa Rajan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deepa Rajan. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited to tell you today about COVID-19 classes for kids and how it could possibly help you as an educator in your classroom. But first, I want to talk a little bit about how I got this idea. Would you mind advancing to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I want to draw your attention to this photo, which is an electron microscopy image of the coronavirus itself. And I think it's really important to focus on because I know that in news media outlets, we're inundated with images of hospitals, of people protesting, but it often helps center me when I actually look at the virus itself. And I started thinking about this initiative a month and a half ago when COVID was still kind of not as big of a deal as it is now, and we hadn't started sheltering in place. I was talking to my mentor at the University of California, San Francisco, where I'm a student. And my mentor is a physician there, and right now he's on the front lines treating people who have COVID. And he told me about his approach to the entire situation. Everyone is stressed out, but he had a somewhat fatalistic approach, as in he assumed that everyone is going to get coronavirus. He's going to get it. His family is going to get it. But he doesn't want to worry about things that he cannot control. And instead, he saw this as an opportunity to step back and actually marvel at the power of nature. It's actually a very humbling opportunity and a rare one that is unprecedented in our lifetimes, that we can kind of sit back and see how this tiny little virus that can only be seen on an electron microscope has taken over the entire world. And so throughout all of the craziness, I want to shed light on how this is an opportunity for learning and growth. And it can be a very stressful time for students, parents, teachers, and everyone alike. But I thought that an initiative to teach students about coronavirus would be really useful in helping them see how we are actually living through a moment in history, and that it can be actually really enriching for them to learn as much about this virus as possible so that they can really digest the power of nature and also what they can do to protect themselves. Could you please advance the next slide, please? Yes, so the mission of COVID classes for kids is to mobilize health professions graduate students across the country to teach free virtual interactive lessons about coronavirus to children who are currently sheltering in place at home. So I am a first year medical student. And since I'm not actually on the clinical side of things, because we're very early in our training, I know a lot of us, as well as fellow graduate students, PhD students, nursing students, physical therapy students, are feeling that we want to contribute, even though we cannot be on the front lines. And we do have a wealth of knowledge because we have access to excellent faculty who are experts in these fields. And so we would like to actually teach virtual lessons through video calling platforms such as Zoom to children who might not have access to this knowledge. And of course, we're being inundated with media outlets and headlines that I can hardly keep up with. But I think it's important to provide a space where we can critically digest and reflect on everything that's going on and possibly take away some opportunities for learning and growth. And I hope that with COVID classes for kids, we can mobilize health professions graduate students who are willing to offer their time and pair them with classroom educators who are looking for resources to teach their students about what's going on in the world today. So in terms of logistics, I think you can advance all of the bullets for this one. So my vision for this is I'll show you later on in this presentation, but there's a sign up link for you if you are a classroom educator. And in the sign up link, you just put your name, email address, how many students you teach or anticipate will be joining this virtual lesson, and what grade level you teach. And once you fill out that form, we will match you with a couple of health professions graduate student volunteers. And once you are matched, they will contact you directly and schedule a very individually tailored lesson to your class. And I just want to be clear, it's not a full-blown course on coronavirus because, of course, I don't even think the knowledge is so rapidly advancing that I just want to make sure that we're not misinforming anyone. But rather, it's 1 to 2 virtual lessons based on knowledge that you think would be useful for your classroom. And we can cover a wide variety of topics that I'll talk about in the next couple of slides. And the length will be around 30 minutes to 1 hour long, but I want to emphasize that we are extremely flexible and our goal is to meet your needs. So it's not a one size fits all, it's meant to be interactive. And once your matched student volunteer contacts you, you can tell them how many students you think would be a good limit for each class. Like, do you think 15 students is a limit or 30 students? Because we don't want to overwhelm the students with so many people on the same Zoom call or video calling platform call. And so I just want to emphasize that there will be a lot of communication between the classroom educator and the student volunteer so that hopefully we can get the logistics worked out to your specifications.
And I just wanted to jump in really briefly here because there's a couple things that you just mentioned that are exactly why I really wanted to lead and have this conversation with you as a part of our PD series. And first of all, that Deepa, we know you because you were one of our travelers, and the Reach the World, traditional Reach the World experience is all about matching travelers with classrooms. And I love that you have taken this, that concept and applied it to something that's really necessary right now. And I know you'll go into some of the different ways that subject area can be intertwined into this, not just in the STEM space, but across multiple facets. But I love that you've incorporated that matching, which is something that's so core to the Reach the World experience. Also that this is an opportunity for not just educators, but also for, I think that there's also a benefit here for families, that a lot of adults are also looking at what they can do to provide enrichment opportunities and experiences with their kids. And we obviously, and you'll be doing a show and tell later this week, and that's why we launched our show and tell program. But I think this is another great example of that it can be curricular, but it can also just be for families and adults who are looking to do something with their children that is constructive and engaging, and also demystifies some of the stressors around this very understandably so scary pandemic.
Yes, thank you for adding that. So in terms of content, you can advance all of the bullets here. As I mentioned before, there are so many aspects to this coronavirus pandemic, and it's not just science oriented, because this is affecting every single aspect of life. From, you probably hear about the economic aspect in the newspapers every day as people are protesting whether to reopen the economy or businesses or not. And so we can offer a wide area of expertise depending on what you want us to do. For example, if your classroom population has a lot of Asian Americans and they happen to be experiencing discrimination because of this pandemic, we want to address that. And we can provide resources and match you appropriately as long as you let us know. So the topics can be very much tailored to your needs, and we will also provide you with a Google Drive database of links and resources of things that you can actually share to your classroom even without us, depending on what topics you want to cover.
And I just wanted to add in a couple more things. As a former social studies teacher myself, I mean, I love the prompt that you have there, or the concept around incorporating it into a social studies classroom. But I think putting on my history teacher hat, I think that there's also something where interested classrooms could also look at this as a historical comparison too. So if you're a high school history teacher and you're looking at American history, which is a pretty common thing, you could do a historical comparison between this and the 1918 flu pandemic, which is, and especially against multiple other aspects of like you've put here, against discrimination and politics and that sort of thing. The other thing that I wanted to throw out there is that this could also be really great in an English language arts course, in particular for the upper elementary at the 4th, 5th grade, even up to 6th grade, where it's all about persuasive writing, right? That's where students are learning the mechanics of persuasive writing. And how important is it to get the right messaging out and to do it effectively? So you could teach students how to encourage others to practice social distancing, how to put on a mask, and allow those students to come up with ways to effectively communicate those very important health requirements and expectations right now. So I totally agree that while this is very naturally within the STEM space, there are so many ways that you can bring this into multiple classrooms. And that's yet again why I just absolutely love this idea that you're leading.
Right, thank you for adding that. And actually, back to your point on social studies and history, one of my inspirations for this project was a few weeks ago, there was a documentary that I was watching while eating dinner on PBS about the 1918 Spanish flu. And I was thinking, probably my grandchildren might be watching someday a documentary just like that about coronavirus, this COVID pandemic. And if I was born in 1918 and in that time, I was thinking, what would I have wished to know? And I would have wanted to know about all of the facets of what's happening in the world around me. All of the things about the flu. What is the flu? At that time, they weren't even clear what a virus was. So I think knowledge is really powerful in helping you feel like you are a part of what's happening in the world, and that you can maybe even do something to help or change the progression. And in terms of English and literature, there are actually new forms of art that are emerging that I see online. There's a New Yorker poem published from my alma mater actually a couple of weeks ago that I was hoping to incorporate into some of my lesson plans, and it's about using masks. And there are also some really interesting graphic designer comic materials released specifically for children, even coronavirus coloring books that we're hoping to incorporate into our curriculum as well. So the sky's the limit in terms of creativity and the multidisciplinary aspects of this. So we hope to advance those boundaries. So in terms of resources, this will also be linked along with this video, but all you have to do is fill out this form, and the form itself will contain a whole write-up of all of the information covered in this video in terms of content, the logistics, and where to go if you have any questions. And of course, you can also email me directly at this email address.
Awesome. We were going to open things up into questions in a second, but I did want to follow up what Deep was mentioning in the previous slide with a few more links and a few more resources for everyone. Chief among them, this actual presentation. So everyone now has access to this presentation by going to tinyurl.com/RTWPD-6. You can actually use the same URL and change the numbers 1 to 5 if you want to see any of our previous presentations on a wide range of aspects of what it's like to be teaching in this very new novel place around virtual exchange. And also please continue to visit athome.reachtheworld.org for the most up-to-date information. And just like Deepa gave her contact information, please also, you have the ability to email myself and my colleague Tim for any other questions or comments that you want to share with us. Now I'm going to actually stop sharing for the moment, so that way we can open it up to a little bit of Q&A and to have a little bit more of a conversation. But before we go over to any questions that have come out through the chats, I actually wanted to ask a question first. And my question is a pretty simple one. What is your ultimate goal for doing this kind of on your own for free, with kind of little to no support to speak of? So what is the real goal and objective for doing this?
I think the goal for me is to make sure that people around me, or students in grade school, have the resources to think about this historical moment critically, to really immerse themselves and have the proper tools to do so. Because when coronavirus was first becoming a big thing about 2 months ago, the first thing I wanted to do was do as much research on coronavirus as possible, because I felt that this was a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's scary, but it's also a tremendous opportunity for learning and growth because of its unprecedented nature. So I want to make sure that students in grade school have the same opportunity to really saturate themselves with as much about this virus as possible, but not in a scary way, in a way that's empowering and lets them realize what's going on in the world and the tools that they have to deal with it.
Deepa, I had a quick question for you. There's so much to learn about this concept, and I feel like yourself and other medical professionals understand it at a really detailed medical level. How do you approach simplifying something that's so complex in a way that helps younger people understand it and maybe fear it less or feel better equipped to make it a part of their life?
Yeah, that's a great question. we're hoping that some of the partnerships with classroom educators can help us calibrate to the level of that particular classroom. For example, if I were matched with a 7th grade classroom educator, one of my first questions would be, what have you already covered in your science class? And do you know what a virus is or how it's different from a bacteria? And based on the answers of a classroom educator, I would then tailor my presentation to explaining what needs to be explained. And hopefully I will be able to share my slide deck with the classroom educator beforehand so that they can approve or let me know that, hey, we haven't covered this yet, so you need to explain this in greater detail. And we also hope to incorporate some less nitty-gritty science material in our curriculum to make it more accessible to students. For example, I mentioned the graphic illustrations, the comic strips that have emerged about coronavirus, and also different art media. And I also hope to have some rich Q&A and just open reflections, just discussions fostered around the Zoom call where the students can tell us what they need and we can respond accordingly.
Awesome. Yeah, there's so many I see so many approaches being taken to, either not over explaining, but in some cases like going into such great depth that people feel like they really understand what's happening in this new kind of universe we're all grappling with. And also people, shying away from some of the scarier aspects of coronavirus. And I am personally grateful to have the voices of medical professionals like yours available to share with kids in particular.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a former social studies teacher, and one of the most important things that I did in my classroom was provide students training and understanding on how to vet sources and how to vet information, because you can't really have a strong social studies classroom without understanding things like primary, secondary, tertiary sources, and understanding things like bias. And obviously those things are important to any civic lifeblood. But right now, there's so much information, and like you were saying earlier, Deepa, the information around COVID-19 and the novel coronavirus more in general is happening at such a rapid rate that empowering students in particular and young people and families to be able to interpret this information as it continues to evolve by giving them that baseline, that foundation, is so critically important to transitioning from a place of fear to a place of understanding and empowerment. And that, to me, again, as a former social studies teacher, why I think this is such a great idea, and why I think that this will be a really successful one for a lot of different learning communities.
Agreed. Thank you.
Have you come across anything, Deepa, that surprised you over the course of your time and, sort of reading about and thinking about the coronavirus?
Well, honestly, this entire thing is surprising to me because I just 2 months ago, I never would have imagined that all of my classes would be moved online, that everyone would be sheltering in place at home. I think perhaps one of the surprising things for me is that the US has the highest death toll right now, and even higher than Italy. And I think it just shows that we have a lot of work to do in terms of public health management, our policy interventions. And there's a lot of analysis work that needs to be done after this. And I was just surprised at the magnitude and how much it erupted. It just was unexpected for me.
Sure, yeah, I think that caught a lot of us off guard, even people who are not as immersed in the medical community as you are. I'm really kind of fascinated with this idea that you led with, that, once we process and continue to deal with the staggering amount of death and fear and some of the scary things around the coronavirus, that this is also an opportunity to sort of marvel in a at least gain some more respect and understanding of these powerful natural forces. Do you have one or two things you can tell us just about the virus itself? Like what fascinates you about the virus? I have a very baseline understanding, and you seem to be really up to date on it.
Well, one unique thing that fascinated me, and it came out a few weeks ago, I think, is the symptom of losing your sense of smell when some people are afflicted with coronavirus or COVID. And it shows the loss of sense of smell might mean several things. It could mean that the coronavirus actually affects the nervous system and affects those neurons that allow you to have this olfactory sense or sense of smell. Or it could also just mean that the symptoms of having such a heavy fever, perhaps that's what's inundating your entire smell system. So, but it made me think that perhaps this coronavirus is more nefarious than we thought, in terms of it's not just affecting our coughing, it's not just affecting other typical cold symptoms, but it might actually just be affecting our sensory perceptions, which is part of what makes us who we are.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I've read some of that as well about the loss of smell, and also one thing that I've read more recently that I think just shows how this evolution of understanding is happening, is that now there are a lot of patients who have needed to receive intensive care that are developing problems with kidneys and other aspects that are non-respiratory system are being affected in a way that we're not quite sure of yet. And that is, again, the need to not necessarily be scared, but to continually ask the right questions to get the right information. And obviously the people asking those questions are people like you. and we're very glad to have people like you asking those right questions. Now, I have one final question before we close, and it's just to kind of widen the lens a little bit. Now, you briefly mentioned the public health elements of this conversation, or of the need to think about things from a public health perspective right now. And something that I have been lucky to learn in my career is around social determinants in health, and that looking at things that are traditionally seen as social factors and how they actually affect people's health and well-being. Things like education is actually a public health issue when seen through that lens. And so thinking of this public health crisis as a broader piece, what are some pieces of advice that you would give to people to be more prepared, aside from the more very important, but the typical recommendation of wear a mask when you're outside, wash your hands, stay 6 feet away? Are there any other things that you would advise or recommend?
Well, first, a disclaimer, I'm not yet a health professional, so I don't think my recommendations can be official. But in terms of the social perspective, it is coming out. So of course, this is a unique opportunity when society deems certain professions as essential and others as non-essential. So what has come out is that many of these essential fields are actually filled with women and minorities, whether it's a grocery worker, a home nurse aide, or a hospital worker. A lot of those people are those who are pushed down in other aspects of society. And I think this is a special way that it's coming up, that they are actually the cornerstones of how we live. And back to what I was mentioning earlier about my mentor, who is a doctor and on the front lines working with patients who have COVID, he mentioned this quote from Jurassic Park, life finds a way. And it sticks with me. And life finds a way in both directions. Coronavirus, I mean, people don't really consider viruses alive, but in a way it's similar to a living thing. coronavirus has definitely found a way. It's rapidly mutating and it's affecting people in different social strata in different ways, because some people can afford to shelter at home and other people can't. And hence we have all of these social dilemmas and protests that are emerging. So I think it's important to not stomp on people who have different opinions, because people are just trying to survive. People are life as well. Life needs to find a way, and people are just trying to find food and keep their families safe. And so I think this is a time that calls for understanding. And there are some moments that I really find beautiful in the midst of this coronavirus crisis, because this is a time where the entire world is united. We are all striving for the same goal, which is the survival of the human species, this very primeval goal that has drawn evolution since the beginning of time on Earth. And once we focus on that broader lens, I hope that we can come together as a society and work out these problems.
I love that, and what a way to end it, by talking about the importance of life and our society to find a way. And I couldn't agree more that we are all in this together, whether we're talking about the Reach the World community, the community of all of us here who are living in the United States, and as a global community. And this is something where health is binding all of us together in this new way that at least I hope, and I think that both of you would agree with me, will help bring us together, especially using these types of technology tools. So with that, I will, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I do want to offer my sincere appreciation and thank you to you, Deepa, and to everyone who is watching today's session and will be watching in the future on demand. And for that, I again thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day and of your week. And Deepa, we'll be speaking to you later this week on your show and tell. But until then, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.